Welcome to a now week 13 edition of Thinking Out Loud. Thanks for watching, listening, liking, clicking, subscribing, sharing, any ing that makes you happy. It makes us happy. We thank you for being here. My name is Andrew Siciliano. Hope you're having a fantastic holiday week. Hope you're not watching the local news with stock footage from 4 years ago of traffic jams in front of the airport. You know, a lot of those traffic jams are caused by local news trucks that park right there at the entrance to the terminal and put their big satellite, thing up. And then everyone stops and gawks at the live shot with, "Hey, what do you think of the travel?" Yeah, a lot of it's caused by local news. I kid. It really isn't. Just get there early. I would say that most issues at airports on holidays are caused by people just getting anxiety about traveling on the holidays and just standing there, just staring up at the ceiling and appearing lost. Maybe I'm just an angry airport person that runs through the airport and say, "Get out of my way. I know where I'm going. Please, you people are just standing there looking lost." Like, you can't stand there. Hi there, Sam Patesh, laughing in the background. You can't stand there in the middle of the terminal with your coffee, just going, "What are we doing?" Like, just move. Just keep moving. It's really not that bad. Now, yes, there are a lot of people traveling, and I'm just being a curmudgeon here on the holidays, but just keep moving. The majority of problems at the airports are people that just refuse to move. Just move. Just keep moving. And you will get to where you're going, and the planes will take off on time. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thankful for this friendship, for this show, for being able to just talk about football. Thankful for having an interesting fan experience this past weekend, which I know we will talk about. Very thankful for that as well. And also, it's interesting what you said about the news and travel. You remember a few years back in Los Angeles, they were shutting down the 405 freeway, and it was supposed to be Carmageddon, right? And all the news scared everyone so much that the freeways were wide open.
From 3 years ago on Twitter.
It's great.
It was like
freeways never been more clear ever. It was great.
What are we doing? I fun fact, I went to the dentist this morning here, and to no one cares, but it's about traffic on the holidays. To get from my house to the dentist, I had to pass through LAX. And so I'm like, I'm going to leave super early because it's going to be a disaster. Breezed right through. Now, that said, it is bad, and it is going to be the busiest ever. But if you want to play the busiest holiday weekend ever drinking game, you can just go do a Google News search for the last 10 years of headlines before Thanksgiving and before Christmas. It's guaranteed to be the busiest,
the biggest and busiest
travel day ever, with the exception of 2020. There was something going on there in 2020. But every other year, biggest travel day ever. It's actually, I think, far worse on the roads than it is at airports. Airports are really, really, really bad. I get it. I live on airplanes. I get it. It's bad. Last Sunday, when I came home from, where the hell was I? No, Saturday, I came home from New Jersey,
Piscataway,
Illinois. Yes, Newark to LA. It was really bad. Okay, because it was the beginning of the holiday week. I landed at LAX late Saturday evening. Late Saturday evening is usually dead. DED dead, as somebody once said. I landed. It was packed at 9 o'clock at LAX on a Saturday night, which is red-eye time for those who don't know. East Coast people. West Coast, 9 o'clock, packed normally because everyone's taking the overnights. But this was more so. Everybody bundled up, right? Kids running around. And I am also convinced that travel is worse in the winter, not only because of weather, but because so many people have coats. Coats are the issue. Really. First of all, when you add a coat to every back in the airport, it does cut down on space. It's just
this
physics.
Is brilliant.
It's really just physics. If nobody wore a coat, there'd be more people more room in the airport. It's just math. Really. And then also, when everyone gets on the plane with those coats, it's tighter quarters in the plane, and it's longer to load because people sit down and go, "Oh, I don't want to wear my coat."
So taking off the coat.
My coat. It takes time to take your coat off. Then it takes time to put your coat up in the overhead, right? And then there's less room in the overhead, which means more time to load because fewer space, less space for the bags, and then everyone's got to take their bags to the front of the plane, and then flight attendants get mad, and then there's again, physics, the inevitable, people are trying to slam the overhead shut, and you're like, it's physics, dude. Look, your suitcase is sticking out. It will not close. And they keep slamming it.
You would be embarrassed by me walking around Los Angeles with the coat that I owned while I lived in Connecticut for a few years. I still wear that in LA when it drops anywhere below 70, basically. And we're talking furry hood, the entire thing. It's ridiculous. So I'm coat guy at the airport too. It's an embarrassment.
I just got on a plane in a suit. Well, no, I had the suit and I had the overcoat. I had like 4 jackets with me because I had to go from Cleveland, where we thought it was going to be raining, and then it was actually snowing, to New York, where it was both rain and snow and everything. But you're on camera, so you have to have the overcoat. So I had 15 different coats. I was able to get them all into my suitcase and scrunch it down and get it in the overhead. And then I was able to, hey guys, look, if you're on the window, which I was fortunate enough to be on the window, you can fold your jacket and put it on the armrest, and you could fold it, and then between the side of the plane and the window and the side of the armrest. And it's also like comfortable. You can do that too. People don't think when they're in airports. Think. All right. I guess we're talking about football.
That's okay. I mean, this is all related to football. I mean, the travel is related to football, and there'll be plenty of that.
There are 3 games Thursday and a game on Friday as well, the Black Friday game. The Chiefs and the Raiders, where the Raiders will beat the Chiefs again for the second consecutive Thanksgiving week. I don't know that they are, but I mean, Aiden O'Connell, if he's able to play, wouldn't that be fun? I'll tell you this right now, Desmond Ridder is not going to beat the Chiefs, and that's not negativity. It's just analysis. All right, let's get to, and there are 3 teams with clinching scenarios this week. We'll do that later. Let's get to, for me, the most interesting headline right now, and that is, where is Daniel Jones going to go? As we tape this on Tuesday, me back from the dentist, Sam back from the Eagles win Sunday night. As we tape this, Daniel Jones is out of a team. The Giants officially waived him. He cleared waivers. All of this after last week. They not only benched him, they put him as the 4th string guy because they don't want him to get hurt. Like, they don't want a $23 million injury guarantee that they have to pay next year. So in essence, they just said, hey, DJ, we've made the decision. You're not going to be our guy next year. We're going to cut you in the offseason. So, like, I hope you get it. We just don't want you to play. And we don't want you near a practice field, really, because if you get hurt, then we're stuck. So Daniel Jones came in last Friday morning, and said, can you just let me go then? Like, I don't want to go through this, and you don't want to go through this. We've made the decision. As my friend once said years ago about relationships, if it's immediate, make it inevitable. I screwed that up. Use take 2. If it's inevitable, make it immediate, right? If you're going to do it, and we know we're going to, just do it now. If it's inevitable, make it immediate. And so that's what the Giants did. And they thanked him, and he thanked them, and they moved on. And brief aside, if you want to mock Daniel Jones for an emotional reading of a thank you to the fans, that reflects on you, not on him. But I digress. That said, Daniel Jones now can go anywhere. Of course, he cleared waivers. No one wanted to pick up his contract. A lot of people have said, well, he should go to this playoff contender or that playoff contender, or better yet, he should look towards next year. Gardner Minshew broke his collarbone. Why doesn't he go to the Raiders? Right? That's a great setup. Plant your flag right now in Vegas. I should be the guy next year. Bad idea. Don't go to Vegas. They're going to be picking in the top 10, if not the top 5, if not even higher. They could go get Shedeur Sanders. That makes sense. Or Cam Ward. That makes sense. Don't go there. I would not go to any quote-unquote bad team with an eye on next year. Why would you do that? So much can change between now and the draft. Coaches could get fired. Trades could be made. Quarterbacks could be falling. Quarterbacks could be cut, like, your kind of scenario where they go, we like him better than you. Don't go to a bad team. There is only one place where Daniel Jones should go. That's if they want him. Don't know that they do, but that is the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy, sore shoulder. Jay Glazer reported last week, hey, MRI came out clean. He went out there to throw, and on Thursday, just went, oh boy, it doesn't feel right. Brandon Allen started. They lost. They lost in Green Bay. With playoff implications, they're now under 500. Brock Purdy, assume he's good to go. If he isn't, even better case, you go there. That's where you need to go regardless because of Kyle Shanahan. Best case scenario, and I really do mean this, Daniel Jones goes to San Francisco. Brock Purdy is healthy. They play. If they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. If you're in, that's great. If you're out, that's even better. But you can, after the season, say, I went to the Kyle Shanahan School of Quarterback Rehab. It worked for Sam Darnold. And I don't just mean perception. It worked when it came to the football as well. A year behind Brock Purdy, a year in the system, a year with Brian Griese as well. And then look at Sam Darnold. Now, Daniel Jones has played some good football in his career. He truly has. Not enough of it recently, clearly. But if you go there, and if they need you, that's great. If they don't, honestly, I think it's even better. That, to me, is the best case scenario. We saw something similar. Baker Mayfield came to L.A. He obviously had the 48-hour rule, meaning he landed in 48 hours later with Sean McVay. He beat the Raiders in primetime. That was fantastic, but it helped his career. The Sean McVay School of Quarterback Rehab. If I'm Daniel Jones, that is the only place I want to go. There's the Baltimore, right? That's nice. Josh Johnson is the backup. That's an upgrade. Sorry, Josh. There's Miami. That would be nice. The Dolphins could make a little playoff run here, a push at least to make a wild card, and maybe even Minnesota behind Sam Darnold and with Kevin O'Connell. But those are the only places I should go if I'm Daniel Jones, Sam. I don't think there's really many other options.
The San Francisco thing makes perfect sense. And as you said, Sam Darnold, and everyone would take a flyer on that, right? You simply look at Sam Darnold. Here's the product of that. And now Daniel Jones has had some time to reflect, sit, and really do nothing. And a lot of times that's the best case scenario. The less he's on the field, likely, the more we will probably think, oh, maybe something has happened. I don't know that him getting on the field, but I would imagine that Daniel Jones wants to get on the field. And just follow me down this path. If the theory is that he wants to get on the field and play. In other words, if some part of the conversation with the Giants was, we know, as you said, it's inevitable. And so I'm going to get out of here. But I'm also going to get out of here because I would like to still play football in this league as a starting quarterback. How about this? What if he stays in New York? And what if Daniel Jones, instead of with the Giants, is with the Jets? Now, Aaron Rodgers has played all right. I would say he's played okay. And even in most scenarios, you'd probably say a little less than that. Could Daniel Jones get on the field for the Jets this season? Would there be any scenario in which that happens? And would that be easier for him simply in the idea that he now doesn't have to move, doesn't have to uproot his life? He's in New York already. Maybe he even learned something from Aaron Rodgers and he is there in New York. And when the Jets decide this season is really not going the way that it was supposed to, which it already isn't.
Wait,
and
you
say,
don't
you
think
know
they figured that out yet?
What I mean is, even for Aaron Rodgers, in other words, to say, as you said, the inevitability with Aaron Rodgers to say, and even Aaron Rodgers understanding, I'm not going to get hurt this season for this team. That's if Aaron Rodgers wants to play next season at all. But if he does, and he says, you know what? Yeah, I don't need to be on the field anymore for this team. And Daniel Jones is there in New York. That's my wild theory on this one.
So about a half hour ago, Sam and I talked about this on the phone. And I can't use the exact phrase.
Oh, it's good. It's a phrase that should be on t-shirts.
I have a better chance of walking on the moon right now.
This evening, you said, actually. So yeah.
This evening, than that happening. And the sound, I wasn't ignoring you when you were talking there. The sound you heard is me Googling who is Daniel Jones's agent. And I should have known this. It's Brian Murphy and Cam Hahn. If Brian or Cam called Daniel Jones right now and suggested that, if I were Daniel Jones, I would fire them both.
It's okay.
I didn't actually think you were serious when you said it on the phone. It's quite. I'm not going to see. This is where you have to be careful. You're not calling the person a name. You're calling the idea a name.
Full disclosure.
It is
yes,
one of the most ridiculous, unrealistic, and I would say dumbest things I've ever heard. Not you are dumb.
No. I'm saying that
if it was said, if I'm Daniel Jones, I would fire the people that suggested that. Why on earth would I want to go from one totally dysfunctional New York team to another totally dysfunctional New York team that just fired its GM, is on an interim coach who will not probably even get an interview for the full-time job, right? Full house cleaning with an ownership, not change, but an ownership question, with Woody likely going back to London and Christopher Johnson taking over. And with everything that is Aaron Rodgers, who just got off Pat McAfee, pushing back against reports that he knows he's not going to be there next year, and pushing back against the idea that Woody Johnson, after a week 4 loss to Bo Nix and the Broncos, wanted him benched. And then when he was told no, a week later, Woody Johnson fired Robert Saleh. This after, of course, the Jay Glazer report on Sunday that when Woody Johnson fired Joe Douglas, he landed in a helicopter. Joe Douglas turned to his coworkers and said, by the way, if that's him firing me, it's good to know you. Nice to work with you. And then 5 minutes later, he was called inside to talk to the principal. You want to go play there the last 6 weeks? Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Merry New Year to you and yours. Like there is no worse location to go.
Although one other that's wild would be for this week and potentially to play for the Cowboys and play against the Giants. Now, of course, short week, nearly impossible, but to your 48-hour rule. Now, of course, McCarthy is not necessarily McVay in regards to quarterback school, but again, a situation where he'd see the field.
Would never do that.
And a situation where he would see the field, though. Interesting there.
Well, why would he see the field? You're going to sign a guy off the street and put him ahead of the veteran
Rush or Trey,
the veteran that you have had on your roster for 5 years, and the veteran that you have not ever gone out, other than overpaying for Trey Lance as a developmental player. But now after 2 years, you go, we don't even want to see him. Like, we don't want to see him.
First of all, Cooper Rush,
I don't want to see him.
Cooper Rush has been
Cooper Rush. You're not going to replace him on a whim with Daniel Jones.
Cooper Rush has been bad. I mean, clearly, even in the win against Washington, Cooper Rush has been bad, has overthrown and underthrown numerous receivers, has not taken advantage of CeeDee Lamb. Cooper Rush has been ugly, and the Monday night game against Houston was awful, and frankly, in the Washington game was not much better either, and that game was won clearly on special teams. But I'm going to stick with New York. I'm going to say New York to New York. Giants to Jets. That's where I'm going.
Mean it.
Yes. In a world in which he can stay home and still see the field and still figure out next year and then know that, okay, now I've still got somewhere to figure out. I mean, again, even in your scenario, he's not staying in San Francisco long-term, right? I mean, much like Darnold.
No, but you're looking towards next year. Playing now, and I mean this, playing now for a bad team will only hurt Daniel Jones.
Potentially.
There is no good.
Playing poorly, of course. Now, if he gets on the field and plays well, but again, what is the likelihood of that? And in New York, is he insulated the way that he needs to be with the Jets? Probably not. But scenarios where he could see the field, I think you're right when you said Raiders. He could see the field.
It's not just let's go see the field again. Like, to go to the Jets, it's like let's go to a worse offensive line with a bigger circus. Sure.
It's my wild idea. Maybe it'll get you to the moon. That's my wild idea for the day.
All right. I sounded angry there. I'm not. I just
no. I appreciate that. I like that. That was sobering.
Just like don't go like the well, you can stay at home. He could afford a flight.
40 million season. I mean, that's the other thing. By the way,
he could afford generally speaking, teams will fly you first class to come visit.
Probably.
And if not, he could afford net jets, flex jets, like whichever one.
40 million. Not terrible.
He could do it. Anyway, I digress. That's number one. So I said Daniel Jones needs to go there. I really do. I think the Niners might not want him. Kevin O'Connell might want him more. The Ravens may want him more. The Dolphins may want him more. It's about putting yourself in the best situation, in my eyes, for free agency in March and for next year. As for Aaron Rodgers, again, he pushed back this morning against any idea that he knows where he's going and still wants to see what they do with the coaching. And it's that very awkward, well, what am I doing? No, what are you doing with the Jets? I think as we're building towards the inevitable departure, probably before the end of the league year in March. Okay, Sam, let's get to the game we were both at on Sunday evening at SoFly Stadium, which was all green. It was actually kind of depressing. Credit to the Eagles fans. I'm not here to rip Rams fans. I'm here to quite the opposite. I love Rams fans. To praise Eagles fans. Second consecutive year the Eagles have played at SoFi. I didn't think that back-to-back years would see so many fans, but hey, they were there. You were there. And the Eagles had a resounding victory. A game that was actually a one-score game midway through the third quarter before Saquon and the Eagles finally pulled away. Rams and Kyron Williams with the turnovers, that didn't help. Rams' third down defense was awful. A lot of that was Jalen getting loose in the pocket. A lot of that was Saquon just doing his thing on early downs, not just on third down. And A.J. Brown, big man, does good things as well. Eagles are a physical football team that are going to run downhill at you. And I'll be honest, when I saw them week 6, I did not think they were good. They came off a bye. They were 2-2. They got healthy at wideout, got healthy with Lane Johnson in that game, week 6 against the Browns. Browns did them a lot of favors, and the Eagles took them. Again, didn't look that good, but they got the win. Nick Sirianni's yelling at fans in the stands. All the screaming head shows went after him the following week. And if you had told me then that they, as we get to Thanksgiving, would have not lost a game, I would have laughed at you because I didn't think they were a very good team. But I think the team that I saw Sunday night could legitimately challenge the Lions. And a month ago, I thought that was insane. I still think the Lions are the best team in the NFL, period, full stop. I think in a fair fight, they beat anybody. But I think the Eagles looked really good. And Saquon, I know I've crowned Lamar Jackson the MVP plenty of times, but I am ready to say that Saquon deserves the most valuable player award. No running back has won it in 12 years. Adrian Peterson was the last running back to win it. I am ready to crown Saquon for now because he went for 302 yards from scrimmage. 302. Is that good? Yes. Was a lot of it on that really big run there in the fourth quarter? Yeah, but he also had another really big run and another really big run before that. And the guy's a force of nature to his credit. Saquon Barkley, I am ready to say, and I'm ready to change my mind, of course, next week when someone else does something amazing, because that's what we do. It's week 13. That Saquon deserves this league's most valuable player.
Wow. That's a lot, Andrew, to say that he deserves MVP. And I heard earlier today someone mention the fact that because of what the Eagles were last season and even 2 seasons ago being in the Super Bowl, that diminishes what Saquon's impact is. But I think to exactly your point, for what this team was at some point earlier this season and what this team is now, Saquon could arguably be, I would say this early on, I said after the Falcons, that ugly Monday night game where, again, Saquon dropped what could have been a game-sealing pass, short play, which was, again, questioned because they threw the ball instead of ran the ball, et cetera. That argument's been had. But I had said to you early on, this season undeniably is defined by Saquon Barkley. Even through 2 weeks, you saw the game against Green Bay in Brazil. That was a Saquon Barkley game for sure. He caught an incredible touchdown pass and was a huge factor in that game. And then, of course, the loss you could have pinned in some way on either the decision or the dropped pass by Saquon. I said, wow, this Eagles season seems to be running through Saquon Barkley more than perhaps people thought it would because of the collection of what the Eagles had been over the course of the last 2.5 seasons. He is, I don't know if there's another term for it, Andrew. He, from a percentage standpoint, seems to stand the most for the Eagles' outcomes. Does that make sense? In other words, I feel as if the Eagles' season runs so much, the outcome of each game runs so much through Saquon. So most valuable means you're winning.
The Bills, Josh Allen, the Chiefs, Mahomes. He's not the only one. But yes, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And even in what I would say, again, you watched the Chargers last night, right? Herbert is doing less this season, running the ball more. I would say with the Chiefs, there seems to be a little less. Mahomes is not putting up numbers that would suggest he is the only part of that engine that makes it run. Of course, he could be most valuable. It's interesting to suggest not only Saquon, but running back overall, because that's really what this argument is. Could you give it to someone that isn't a quarterback? Right? You said since 2012, and that
there's no rule that says it has to be a quarterback.
It doesn't. But is running back a position that can get this award, considering what we know the quarterback has to do week in and week out. And I think a lot of times what we see is, again, that Minnesota team with Peterson in 2012, I believe Joe Webb was even on that roster as a quarterback. I think he actually started the playoff game for them against Green Bay that season.
Everybody was hurt. Yeah, it was at Lambeau.
Exactly. And I believe Christian Ponder was even supposed to. Regardless, my point being, the quarterback on a team like that was so much less than, and the running back rose the team's stakes beyond what the quarterback could do. In other words, that's when that award seems to play more of a factor, when you think a little less of the quarterback and therefore the offense, and yet this running back makes up that difference. Because Hurts has been in an MVP conversation in the past, does that take it away? And same for Derrick Henry, for that matter. You know, the fact that Lamar Jackson is there, 2-time MVP. Can Derrick Henry really be the MVP on a team that's got Lamar Jackson as the quarterback
out there? How about this? To cut you off, I apologize. I think Lamar and Derrick Henry cancel each other out more than Saquon and Jalen Hurts.
Definitely this season.
Jalen Hurts. I'm sorry, Saquon has far more of an argument than Jalen, and that's not to take away in any way from Jalen. I think the Ravens are still a Super Bowl contender without Derrick Henry and with Lamar, or at least a top of the AFC contender. I think the Eagles with Jalen Hurts and Kenneth Gainwell as your number one,
or even DeAndre Swift from last season.
Okay, but he's not there. Are not at the top of the NFC. I don't.
That is fair. And considering what happened to the Eagles, the unraveling of what the Eagles were last season, and frankly, what their unraveling could have been even when you saw them in the game in Philly against the Browns at that point in the season with plenty of finger pointing, they were not that good. They were obviously not that good when they finished the season last year. They were not that good when they played the Bucs without Devontae and without A.J. Brown. But you could say that what has solved the issues for the Eagles, which was infighting largely and an unraveling last season, the loss of Kelsey and Cox on a team that needed leadership, Saquon has been the glue. Saquon has essentially been the salve over all of the wounds that had ailed them over the course of the last half a season. So in that case, they are certainly the Eagles' most valuable player. And to this point, and I wonder how much this argument would be happening, Andrew, if that game were not on Sunday night. With that, I mean, 300 yards.
300 yards is 300 yards
is going to be a story regardless.
300 yards is 300 yards. Yeah.
It's
not one, not two, 300 yards.
I look, obviously, not only as an Eagles fan, but in the idea that something different and unique and interesting would happen. Yes, I'd love to see Saquon do it. And he is that dynamic. And of course, there's that tinge of the Giants piece of this, which is just that it happened to be in a week in which Daniel Jones was released, and again, you've got Tommy DeVito losing to the Bucs the way that he was, and then to see Saquon do what he did on Sunday night, that hurts. And we know that Saquon would not be in any of these conversations if he were in New York, and we've already said it. They would not be the team that the Eagles are with him, and obviously hadn't been before this.
Yeah.
So it's situational, much like Derrick Henry. It's situational.
I get it. Giants fans, we could have this conversation every single week. It is worse this week as it's a week before Thanksgiving. You know, the season's over, and the Giants were, for all intents and purposes, a no-show against the Buccaneers. And when Malik Neighbors calls your team soft, that's one thing. He's a kid. When Dexter Lawrence, who should be in the DPOY conversation, calls your team soft, that's another thing. And I was talking to some people that are close to the Giants a few weeks ago, and I asked aloud, why did John Mara come out midseason and say, I will not make any changes? Now, anyone, whether it's an NFL owner or your mailman, whomever, is allowed to change their mind. We all have the right of self-determination and the right to change one's mind. John Mara can change his mind when you come out midseason and say, I'm not making a change next year, and then your team continues to function like this. I don't call, and I never will call for anyone's firing. I don't. That's not what I do. That's not how I operate. John Mara is going to have some very tough decisions to make, and I do wonder whether Hard Knocks will factor in his front office decisions, just the fact that it's all on camera and it's tough. People are going to keep going back to it. And I'll go beyond that. And I said this at the time. I think NFL Films is going to have a hard time finding another team to do the offseason version. Not because of anything specific that happened there. And I know it's hard to separate the two, but just the idea that you open up these conversations to the locker room. Every NFL player knows how the sausage is made. Every NFL player knows that upstairs, conversations are being had in which they are depreciating commodities, right? How old is this player? What is his injury history? How much do we owe him? Their diminishing returns. How do we treat this investment? That's the hard truth. Everyone knows it, but you don't need to see it if you're the player. It's great for the fans, right? The players don't need to see it. Every NFL GM has conversations about trades. It's called doing your job well. Difficult conversations are always had. Team A may call up Team B on a Tuesday, week 5, and go, "Hey, would you ever trade that guy?" And Team B goes, "I don't know. What'd you give me? I'd give you this." No way. Like, it's what you and I would do in fantasy. But that now could be, the headline could be, Team A and Team B had trade talks about player X. No, they didn't. Team A called up Team B, said, go kick rocks. Like, piss off, buddy. Just to see all of that. No,
it's factoring
good
in.
of it.
It's factoring in, Andrew. I think it's fueling. I absolutely think it's fueling this conversation. I think Hard Knocks does have a lot to do with it. And again, the clip that keeps going out is when Mara says to Joe Shane, "It'll be hard for me to see him in Philadelphia." But if you go back and watch, Andrew, it's actually the second to last of the episodes that Mara says the most. It's actually when Saquon when the news comes out that he actually signs in Philadelphia, Mara is in Shane's office and he looks at him. And Shane is saying, "Hey, we'll be fine. We'll be okay." And they're talking about the money and where the difference was, which ended up being probably a little less than they had expected, but it was more than the number they wanted to go to. And Mara says, "I think we were a little timid." Yeah. Mara, you can see Mara's got that regret, which I can understand. Again, when you're the owner of the team and the popularity of Saquon Barkley over the years, yes, especially in that moment, you're feeling it. But you are right. It will be difficult, Andrew. And we saw the training camp version with the Bears, and that's very similar to something we've seen many times. And we're going to see now coming up actually next week, the version of the AFC North, right? And that'll be really interesting also. I will say I found, as a fan, the front office version the most scintillating, the most interesting. It felt the most behind the curtain. And maybe because we are just a little jaded by what we've seen again and again in the training camp version. But the behind the scenes in regards to the draft, the combine, and free agency, wow, was that fascinating and enlightening. It was great. And you're right, though. And by the way, not only for Saquon to see what happens in the conversations about that, the players in the Giants locker room now to think,
that's what I'm talking about. It's more than just Saquon. It's everybody. I agree with you. It was good TV. It was too good.
Yep.
And that's why no one else will want to do it. As for the AFC North one, I am looking forward to it, especially after the big Browns win over the Steelers this past Thursday in the snow, which was phenomenal. And I also want to apologize to the Rams because, Sam, you were in my seats, and I feel that I was part of the problem on Sunday. There were great Eagles fans there. Also a lot wearing velour sweatsuits. Like, stop it. Like, it almost made me embarrass. My name ends in a vowel. Stop with the velour sweatsuits. But I apologize to the Rams for bringing more Eagles fans into the building.
We were, I would say, pretty moderate. We did not go over. Allie was very excited to be at the game. Thank you very much. It was spectacular. And by the way, I saw a lot of Snuggies, a lot of Eagles Snuggies, by the way, as well, Andrew. It was certainly, and I'll say this much for the stadium. Yes, 2 years in a row, it felt like it was 75% green in regards to that. And then for Monday Night Football to also have then the Ravens, and it looked very purple black in regard to less powder blue than purple and black, it seemed, on Monday night as well.
Yeah, I saw Rodney Harrison Sunday night, and Rodney had on that purple suit. I don't know if anyone saw it on the SNF.
It was beautiful.
Show.
Yes.
I'm like, dude, like, why didn't you wear this tomorrow? with the Ravens. It's like, because he wasn't going to stay. That's why. But regardless, I digress. Let's get to week 13. For those who don't know, 3 games on Thanksgiving. As always, there's the Black Friday game, Raiders and the Chiefs. Again, I say again because they had played last year on Thanksgiving.
It was Christmas, actually, not Thanksgiving. Christmas. It was Christmas for that one. Yep.
So another holiday was the Jets and the Dolphins last year on Black Friday, and then a full schedule on Saturday, and then Monday Night Football in Denver, the Browns and the Broncos. Here's what's notable: there are 3 teams that can clinch this week. True story. Some easier than others. Buffalo can clinch this week. Kansas City can clinch this week, and Detroit can clinch this week. 2 of those are wild card. 1 of those is a division. Buffalo can actually clinch the division. If the Dolphins lose at Lambeau on Thanksgiving night, that means Buffalo is win and in for the AFC East against the Niners on Sunday night. That is ridiculous. If that happens, Buffalo would be the first team to clinch a division title with 5 weeks to play in 15 years. Not since Peyton and the Colts in 2009 has a team clinched a division this early, if Buffalo is to pull that off. Now, the only way to pull that off is if the Dolphins lose at Lambeau. If the Dolphins win, Buffalo cannot clinch this week. Detroit can clinch this week. It's complicated. I mean, it's like a 5-team parlay, but it has to include a Lions win on Thanksgiving or a Lions tie. It's unlikely. It's a 4-team parlay, but it's out there. The other one that's out there and is quite possible, Kansas City. If the Chiefs beat the Raiders on Friday, and again, don't know who's playing quarterback for the Raiders right now, likely Aiden O'Connell if he can grip a football, that sets the Chiefs up to clinch a playoff berth. And if they do clinch a playoff berth, it would be their earliest in franchise history as well. Can't win the division, but simply get in. A Chiefs win, they are in as early as Friday. Okay, let's back up. If the Dolphins lose on Thanksgiving, that means the Chiefs are winning in on Friday. Got it? I'm convoluted here. Dolphins lose on Thanksgiving night. Chiefs are winning in on Black Friday. The Chiefs, regardless of the Dolphins, can get in with a win and a Broncos loss on Monday night. Okay? So there's that. A lot of people are, Sam, lacking confidence in the Chiefs as we see the AFC playoff standings on the screen. They are still 10-1. They still are in the driver's seat here for home field advantage yet again in the AFC, but they're not winning with style points. They were pushed to the limit this past Sunday in Carolina against the Panthers. They pulled it out. Harrison Butker kicks the game-winning field goal. Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter is inevitable. Mahomes did say, however, that it would be nice to win a game by more than a field goal or more than a touchdown or more than a fourth quarter or overtime final possession, which is what they had to do this time yet again. I am not one of these people that thinks that the Chiefs are somehow horribly flawed because they win close games. You and I were talking about this on the phone. I think it actually speaks well to their long-term prospects because they are in close games. They do, quote unquote, know how to win. And yes, I am using air quotes. I think that, especially if they get home field advantage, this bodes well, not badly for them. I truly do believe that because I don't think it's going to be the Dolphins. No one wants to go into Kansas City like the Dolphins last year and have to beat those guys in their building. I know the Bengals have done it, but nobody wants to have to go do that. And the Chiefs at home, assuming they can stay at home, I think it's not an impossible out. They're a more difficult out than anybody else. I think they're fine, to be honest with you.
This is the most terrifying version of the Chiefs we've seen. Now, again, I said this to you. I'm rooting heavily, Andrew. I was rooting for 17-0 for the Chiefs. I wanted the Chiefs to go undefeated through the season. I thought it would make for a more interesting playoff to have this undefeated team, much like we did when Tom Brady and Randy Moss were that team. And the Giants, of course, Eli and David Tyree knocked them off in the Super Bowl. I thought that was a more fascinating storyline, and I wanted to see it. I wanted the Chiefs to run the table. And obviously, Josh Allen on fourth down It didn't happen. It's not going to happen. But winning this way, 8 one-possession wins this season, what they are able to do regarding comebacks, what Mahomes does by the way, Mahomes, when you're up 10 on him, he has a winning record. It is staggering the numbers they're putting together in regards to what they can do in close games. And again, Andy Reid puts them through a rigorous test in training camp so that they are better late in games than they are early in games. And it's why a lot of times you see this. Now, granted, Carolina, as you would point out, Andrew, was probably actually the better team in the fourth quarter in that game on Sunday. Sure. Carolina was very good in that game, obviously incredibly competitive and more than they had been in many games this season. But for Kansas City, and by the way, you watch that game and you just had this sense that it was inevitable. Of course, we've seen it happen in a Super Bowl with much higher stakes than playing Carolina in week 12. But winning these ways, it's not, again, the rust versus rest is not really the conversation we're having. It's more margin of victory is the conversation we're having. And you could argue, are the Lions in better shape for the season they're having than the Chiefs? If they were to meet, is there one that feels more battle tested?
The Lions are far more injured right now than the Chiefs.
Yep. And the Chiefs just forget about we would be saying the Chiefs know how to win, even if they weren't struggling this season. And yet they are, quote unquote, struggling. I guess I'll use air quotes as well. It's hard to one loss struggling. I really can't stand that conversation. The Chiefs are not struggling at all. No one should be worried about the Chiefs other than if their team has to play them. This is the best version of the Chiefs we've seen. This version of the Chiefs is the most terrifying. Absolutely under Andy Reid.
I don't know if I'd use the word terrifying, but I know what you're saying. I wouldn't want to have to go there and play them. The only way you're going to beat the Chiefs, not the only way, but your best shot to beat them is make them come to you. And not that weather is going to affect them. They can deal with the weather, but you get them in your building and you somehow can knock them off. I would say this too about the Carolina Panthers. That was the best Sunday you could have had. I really do mean that. I know you lost, but you won in reality. You hung with the Chiefs. You traded punches with the Chiefs. And it was another step forward towards Bryce Young being the guy. Bryce Young looked good. He really did. He marched him up and down the field. Now, am I going to sit here and tell you that I'm convinced he is the guy who was the number one pick and should be the future of your franchise and a winning quarterback for years to come? I'm not there yet, but you lost. You're picking 5th if the season were to end right now. It doesn't. You're still very much in the conversation. You're 3-8. The number one overall pick right now is in Jacksonville. They're 2-9. I mean, you're right there. You're in the running for the first overall pick, and your quarterback is playing well. That's not a bad position to be in because it only increases your options. Let's say Bryce Young finishes the season strong and you have the 3rd overall pick or the 2nd overall pick. You now could legitimately go, now we're good with Bryce and we're going to take a great player to build around him at in the top 5. Or you could take the next quarterback and trade Bryce for something, and it's a far better return now than it would have been a month ago. Or you can just play chicken with the rest of the league. And you could keep Bryce and trade off that top 5 pick to somebody that badly wants to get up there to take their quarterback of the future. At a minimum, it gives you so many other options. You're not desperate anymore because Bryce Young is playing well. Now he's got to keep it up, but he's playing well, and I'm really happy for him. He went through a lot there. Not saying that all of a sudden he's on his way to Canton, nor to the Pro Bowl in Orlando for that matter. Baby steps. But this is, like, if I'm a Panther fan, it hit me in the 3rd quarter. I'm like, you know what? I don't care what happens. Like, I don't. A lot of teams like, oh, we need a tank. Panthers got the best out of it. They lost the game, and their quarterback, Sam, is playing really well.
Yeah, it was great to watch that game and to see that, Andrew, for what it was. And for Kansas City, again, it never felt watching that game, you just don't feel like the Chiefs were going to lose a game like that. You just did the 2-point conversion, though. You started to say, okay, tie game, but plenty of time for Mahomes, obviously. What I found interesting in that game also was Mahomes, his 2 best plays of the season are without throwing the football.
His 2 best plays of the season are people think he's going to run out of bounds, and he somehow stays alive.
He did it against the 49ers, and he did it against Carolina, and it was the difference in the game. And it was an incredible play by Mahomes.
Sorry to cut you off. I had a great conversation with Bailey Zappi, the Browns now third string quarterback, as he was in Kansas City, about that. Not necessarily nothing earth shattering, but just about his ability to do that and how the guy is far faster than you think he is. Like he looks like he's running like he's got a rock in his shoe, but you can't catch him.
And it's really those scary glimpses that we see. That's why I said this was a terrifying version, because Mahomes knows when to use it now. It's almost as if he knows. It's as if you're playing a video game and his energy bar is just always where it needs to be, no matter what. I mean, think about it. He was in 2 seasons ago. He was injured against Jacksonville and still came back to win that game. And then the Super Bowl against the Eagles, he's injured right before halftime and yet comes back to make the biggest play of that game and even made another one with his legs in that game as well. Mahomes is obviously special and completely different. But what you said about Bryce, a month ago, it was impossible to have that thought, Andrew. A month ago.
But you know what I knew?
It was done for Bryce.
Oh, I woke up at 6:30, whatever it was, week 10, 6:30 Pacific here to watch the game in Germany.
Yep.
And I watched that first drive.
The Giants,
the first quarter against the Giants. I'm like, wow, okay. Wow. And it was only one quarter, but it's continued.
Yeah, the New Orleans game was also impressive. Another one where it was back and forth, much like this Chiefs game, and he absolutely hung with it. And even more impressive than what he's doing physically, and of course, yes, you have to be that talented, but mentally to stay with it, to know you're benched for Andy Dalton, to know that the organization could ultimately, in a season where we see Daniel Jones done with the Giants, people move on from their quarterbacks, and clearly he could have thought that was the case for him. To stay with it mentally, it's also a credit to the coaching staff too, to be there with him, to nurture him that way. Really, really, really an interesting thing to see.
And think about this as well. They traded Deontay Johnson. They traded Jonathan Mingo, not that he had done much. And then Jatavian Sanders, they lose him in the, I believe, first quarter with that bad injury. He's okay, was released from the hospital Sunday evening. So you're down 3 guys that week 1 you had circled as weapons, and you're down to Adam Thielen, who love him, but he's all that was left basically, and he did his thing. So yeah, I'm happy for Bryce Young. Don't know where it's going to go, but good for him. So again,
one more thing to say, Andrew, about the Lions, just because I love what you've said it. You've held on it that the Lions are the best team in football, and I would say week in, week out, we are seeing that. I just wanted to throw one stat out there for the Lions that I found. We hear a lot every Sunday. We hear a lot. You read a ton about interesting nuggets about teams. The Lions have scored on 50% of their drives, touchdown or field goal.
That's pretty good.
That just says no matter what you think and where you think you've got them in your sights, as Houston obviously did a couple of weeks ago on Sunday Night Football, that is scary. As scary as Baltimore was on Monday Night Football, turning it on, turning it off, and just being able to score at will. 50% of your drives, that is a stunning number. 50% of your drives to be able to score points. You might be right about the Lions.
They are so clearly the best team in football, but you still got to stay healthy, and you still have to win in January. And it doesn't matter if I think you're, like Josh Allen said, it doesn't matter if we beat the Chiefs in November. What only matters is if we can beat the Chiefs or whomever is in front of us in January. Because the story of the Bills season, I know you mentioned the Lions, but the story of the Bills season, the only story will be, what do they do in January? If they went 9-8, but got to January and won their 4 games, that's all that matters. That's the story of the season. January, they won their 4 games. If they were to lose to the Chiefs in January, the story will be they lost to the Chiefs in January. And that game in November didn't happen. It's as if it was just erased from our memory banks, other than to tell the story that you did it once but couldn't do it again. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Sam, you and Allie, Levi, the whole crew, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching and traveling safely and knowing where you're going in airports.
Remove your coats.
Remove your coats. No. It's not just about removing them. It's more mass in the air. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's as if everyone brought another bag because that's how big winter coats are.
Yes.
It's that much more mass. I digress. We're all going to eat Thanksgiving dinner and get more mass as well. Happy holidays, friends. Thanks for watching. For Sam, I'm Andrew. This is Thinking Out Loud.